I got involved with Chinatown back in '71. I was having dinner with Bob Town, who was at that moment a fledgling writer with a good reputation, and I wanted him to write Gatsby for me. And I offered him at that time, which was an astronomical amount, $175,000 to do it. He said, no, I don't want to try and beat Fitzgerald. But I'm writing a story called Chinatown. He began telling me about it. He says, let's do that instead. And instead of giving him $175,000 to write Gatsby, he took $25,000 because he wanted to write Chinatown.
The title had come from a Hungarian vice cop. He had said that he worked vice and he worked in Chinatown. And I asked him what he did, and he said as little as possible. And I said, well, what kind of law enforcement is that? And he said, hey man, when you're down there with the tongs and the different dialects, you can't tell who's doing what to who, and you can't tell whether you're being asked to help prevent a crime or you're inadvertently lending the color of the law to help commit a crime. So we've decided that the best thing to do when you're in Chinatown is as little as possible.
The whole Chinatown project started with Jack Nicholson calling me one day. We were planning to make something together for years and couldn't find anything. One day he called me in Rome and said that Bob Town has written an exciting script, and soon after Bob Evans called me with the same news.
I wanted a European's vision, not an American vision of it, because the Europeans see America differently.
So I read the script. It was the period when I didn't want particularly to return to Los Angeles. It was a few years after Sharon Tate's death.
He wasn't that anxious at the moment to come back to America, so the tragedy he had, and the picture brought him back to America.
The script was exciting. It was long. It was about 180 pages or something like that. But it had really great material for a movie, so eventually I went to discuss it with them.
I mean, most detective movies had been about exotic falcons, about heists, jewels, weird crimes of one kind or another. Water and power? That was unusual.
That dam's a con job.
What dam?
The one your husband opposed. They're conning L.A. into building it, but the water's not going to go to L.A., it's coming right here.
To the valley?
Everything you can see, everything around us.
Bob wrote the script with Jack in mind, and many of his lines are really Jack's language.
I did write it with Jack in mind. So his temperament, his manner, and the way he uses language, all of it was part of inspiration of the character.
Look, you sue me, your husband dies, you drop the lawsuit like a hot potato, all of it quicker than the wind from a duck's ass.
He wasn't the huge star that he is today. He was a big star on the way up. But it cemented him as not only a character actor, but a leading actor. And, you know, the more you watch it, the more you realize what an extraordinary actor he is.
Do you know me?
Well, I think I would have remembered.
Have we ever met?
Well, no.
That's what I thought. You see, I'm Mrs. Evelyn Mulray. You know Mr. Mulray's wife?
Not, that Mulray.
Yes, Mr. Geddes, that Mulray.
The classic female in noir films is a Black Widow. The Faye Dunaway character, in a way, is a character who gives you those expectations as being potentially that. But in fact, she's the heroine of the movie. In fact, she's the one person in the film that is operating out of decent and selfless motives.
I wanted Faye Dunaway from the start to play Evelyn, and many people were for Jane Fonda. I really saw Faye in this role. And I remember my mother of that pre-war period, she did what was fashionable in those times, that is to plug the eyebrows and draw the thin line, and to put the lipstick in a cupid bow here. And that's how I wanted Faye to look in the film. And she indeed applied that makeup systematically. As a matter of fact, so systematically that finally drove me nuts, because after not only every shot, but every take, she was back in front of the mirror redoing her lips and the eyebrows and the powder.
She was extraordinary, and I don't think anyone could have played it as well.
How much are you worth?
I have no idea. How much do you want?
No, I just want to know what you're worth. Over 10 million?
Oh, my, yes.
Why are you doing it? How much better can you eat? What can you buy that you can't already afford?
The future, Mr. Gitz. The future.
I think that John Huston playing Noah Cross, outside of Jack, is, I would say, the most important piece of casting in the movie. John really shamelessly, in the best way, brought a sense of evil, and that could only be made possible, not because he played it in an evil way, quite the contrary. He was this charming, kind of courtly man. He brought with it all the weight of John Huston, all the power of Huston as a director.
John was my choice from the very start. When one reads the script, one imagines the characters, and I imagine Faye in this part. I imagine John in the part of her father.
Hold it there, kitty cat.
The cameo role that I played, if I remember correctly, was Robert Towns' idea. He said, you must play that part or something like it. And I thought it would be fun for the crew and everybody. It was rather sort of inside joke.
You're a very nosy fellow, kitty cat, huh? You know what happens to nosy fellows? Huh? No? Wanna guess? Huh? No? Okay. They lose their noses.
I remember first thinking of slitting in here, but somehow for a nosy detective to have his nose slit just seemed like a good idea.
I thought of a knife that would have a swiveling tip on it, and I asked them to build it for me, and they did it very well. It was, of course, swiveling in one direction and not in the other. And I said to Jack, please, you have to remind me each time before we rehearse or before I do the take to hold the knife in the right direction, because if I turn it around like this, I just rip your nostril. That was very good, because that added drama to Jack's expression, I think.
I was never worried about it. If Roman planned something, it wasn't planned capriciously, it was planned very detailed.
I think a story of a private eye in Marlowe's style has to be told radically subjectively. It's really all seen or heard by the character that plays Jack Nicholson. When he's hit on the head, he faints, it's a blackout. When he opens his eyes, he sees Faye Dunaway. It's very much like Raymond Chandler's novels.
The characters in the film, I tried to draw from life, not from film. I mean, starting with the Philip Marlowe prototype of Gittes. I mean, Philip Marlowe in Dashiell Hammett movies was always the tarnished knight. My favorite thing about the movie is the time that things take. Going into the library, and Alan Warnick played that snotty guy in the Hall of Records who slaps the ruler down and says,
This is not a lending library, it's the Hall of Records.
And the time Roman takes with that scene, or the infuriating amount of time that he takes when Jack is humming The Way You Look Tonight, and that wonderful character actress who's the secretary for Yale Burton, the new acting head of the Department of Water and Power, is getting annoyed with him. And his willingness to take time to listen to the guys scratching the name of Mulray off the door after he died. All of those moments, he uses them not only to advance the action, but it just generally creates a sense of reality.
Well, I think a classic scene is when Jack grabs Faye.
She's my daughter. My sister, my daughter.
I said I want the truth!
She's my sister and my daughter.
And he understands what Chinatown is all about.
For some reason, my favorite scene from the visual point of view, that's the scene when they leave the Brown Derby and you see Jack and Faye in profiles, and he's got very good dialogue about the nose. He says,
I goddamn near lost my nose, and I like it. I like breathing through it.
in the background between them, you can see the valet fetching Evelyn's car, etc. I think this is a nice shot.
There's something about powerful directors. They're just unmistakably powerful. I think he ended up probably teaching me more than anybody else had that I'd ever worked with.
My collaboration with Roman on two pictures, that and Rosemary's Baby, that leads me to believe that there's no one quite like him.
Each time I see any of my movies, there are plenty of things that I would like to change. That doesn't mean that the movie would be any better. For example, when Gittes is photographing on the roof, the couple downstairs, and I wanted to see the reflection of it in the lens of his Leica. I was hesitating a lot and discussing it, which way to put it upside down or the way it is. In the lens, normally it should reflect upside down. And I thought, for the audience's sake, we won't put it upside down. Today, I would definitely put it upside down.
How many years have I got? She's mine, too.
She's never going to know that.
Bob, in those days, wanted a happy ending. He wanted the girl to survive and Cross to die. I was absolutely adamant that she has to die at the end if the film has to have any kind of meaning. So we fought and we parted before finishing the script. So there was no end to the script.
Get away from her.
You'll have to kill me first.
Get away!
And I wrote that scene literally like a couple of nights before we shot it. And I walked into Jack's trailer with a scene and said, Jack, rearrange the dialogue in your style. Jack took my dialogue and he started changing words and crossing, and that was what you have now in the film.
I never thought it was a masterpiece, but I thought it could have been a failure. The masterpiece came, it built its own story, because it's a kind of film that you have to pay attention to.
I don't think that today I could do the same film, that I wonder whether they would let me finish film in another way, but by a happy ending.
I don't know that it could be made today. I think that it would be considered, at the budget that it would be required, too demanding for audiences.
I think these were great days, and I felt very at home at Paramount then, and working with Bob was terrific because he adhered to the theory that the only thing that counts is the final result, and everything was secondary.
With the passage of time, and I look at the movie and I think, God, it really is a good movie, you know?
I've seen the picture a minimum of a dozen times on the screen, and not only does it hold up, which very few films do hold up after 25 years, but it's better.